The knocking pulled Frank Scott from sleep at 6 a.m. Sharp, insistent raps that echoed through the quiet Saturday morning. He rolled out of bed, noting Kara's side was empty and cold. She must have left early for her morning run. She did that sometimes on weekends. Frank opened the door to find Jeff Lindsay standing there, his neighbor from 2 doors down. Jeff was in his early 40s, recently divorced, always wearing expensive watches and driving a car that seemed too nice for someone who claimed to work in import-export consulting. "Morning, Frank." Jeff's expression was carefully neutral, but something gleamed in his eyes. "Satisfaction, maybe. Sorry to bother you so early, but I thought you should know. Your wife's car has been parked at apartment 12C all night. That's where the divorced guy lives. Manuel Hodges. Just moved in last month." The words hit Frank like cold water. "What? Her Toyota? Been there since I got home at 11 last night. Still there now." Jeff pointed down the hallway of their apartment complex. "I just thought. Well, you'd want to know." Frank's mind raced. Kara had told him she was meeting her book club friend Casey last night. Said she might stay over if they had too much wine. He'd texted her good night around 10. She'd responded with a heart emoji. "Thanks." Frank managed, his voice tight. Jeff lingered. "Look, man, I'm not trying to cause trouble. But if my ex-wife was, I've got it. Thanks." Frank closed the door before Jeff could finish. He stood in the quiet apartment, his heart pounding. Married 3 years. Together for 5. Kara was a paralegal, worked long hours, but they were solid. Weren't they? Frank pulled on jeans and a t-shirt, his hands shaking slightly. He grabbed his keys and walked down the hallway to apartment 12C. Sure enough, Kara's silver Toyota sat in the visitor parking spot directly in front of the building. He stood at the door for a long moment. Part of him wanted to walk away, go back home, pretend Jeff had never knocked. But he'd spent his whole life facing problems head-on. His father had taught him that, confront your fears, don't run from them. Frank knocked. Footsteps. The door opened. A man stood there, shirtless, wearing only sweatpants. Early 30s, athletic build, disheveled hair. Manuel Hodges, presumably. He looked surprised to see Frank. "Can I help you?" Manuel asked. Then Kara appeared behind him, still in the clothes she'd worn yesterday, jeans and a blue sweater. Her eyes went wide when she saw Frank. "Frank, what's going on, Kara?" His voice came out calmer than he felt. "This isn't." She stepped forward, then stopped. Couldn't finish the sentence. Couldn't find the words. Manuel glanced between them. "You must be the husband." "Yeah, I must be." Frank's hands clenched into fists at his sides. "Someone want to tell me what's happening here?" Kara moved past Manuel into the hallway, closing the door partially behind her. "Can we talk? Please." "Not here. I think here is perfect." Frank's jaw was tight. "You've been here all night. Your car's outside." He's shirtless. What exactly am I supposed to think? It's not what it looks like. Then what is it? Kara glanced at Manuel's door, then back at Frank. Something flickered across her face. Fear, maybe. Or urgency. "I can't explain right now. I need you to trust me." "Trust you?" Frank's voice rose. "You're in another man's apartment at 6 in the morning after lying about where you were last night. And you want me to trust you?" "I didn't lie. I was with Casey. And then, something happened. I ended up here because..." She stopped, biting her lip. "Because what?" Manuel opened the door wider. "Look, man, I know how this looks. But your wife was helping me. That's all. Nothing happened between us." "Helping you with what? And why shirtless?" Manuel looked at Kara, who shook her head almost imperceptibly. "I can't say." Frank laughed, a bitter sound. "This is unbelievable. You know what? I'm done. Kara, when you're ready to tell me the truth, you know where I live." He turned to walk away. "Frank, wait." Kara grabbed his arm. "I'm protecting you. If I tell you what's really going on, you'll be in danger." "In danger from what?" "From who?" He pulled free. "You're not making any sense." I know it sounds insane, but I need 24 hours. Give me 1 day, and I'll explain everything." Frank stared at his wife. Her eyes were red-rimmed like she'd been crying. There was a small cut on her hand he hadn't noticed before. And beneath the desperation in her expression, he saw something else. Determination. The same look she got when working on difficult cases at her law firm. "One day," he said finally. "But you're staying somewhere else until then." I can't look at you right now." Pain flashed across Kara's face, but she nodded. "Okay, that's fair." Frank walked back to their apartment, his mind spinning. Inside, he paced, trying to make sense of what he'd seen. His phone buzzed. A text from Jeff Lindsay. "Sorry you had to find out that way. If you need to talk, I'm here." Something about the message felt off. Too convenient. Jeff had been the one to tell him, had known exactly where to send him. How long had he been watching Kara's car? Frank's phone rang. Unknown number. "Hello, Mr. Scott? This is Detective Saul Bowers with the Metro PD. I need to speak with you about your wife, Kara Duffy." Frank's stomach dropped. "What about her? Can you come down to the station? I'd prefer to discuss this in person." 30 minutes later, Frank sat across from Detective Bowers in a small interview room. Bowers was in his 50s, gray-haired, with tired eyes that had seen too much. "Mr. Scott, when's the last time you spoke with your wife?" "This morning. About 30 minutes ago." "Why? What's this about?" Bowers slid a folder across the table. "Your wife filed a police report 3 days ago. She claimed she witnessed suspicious activity in your apartment complex. Possible drug trafficking." Frank opened the folder. Inside were photos, surveillance shots of their building, cars coming and going, people he recognized from the complex. And at the center of several photos was Jeff Lindsay. "She didn't tell me about this," Frank said slowly. "She didn't want to worry you. But she's been working with us, gathering evidence. Your wife used to work for the DA's office before she went into private practice. She knows how these operations work." Bowers leaned forward. "The man she was with this morning, Manuel Hodges? He's an undercover officer." The pieces started clicking into place. The shirtless appearance, probably thrown on quickly when Frank knocked. Kara's inability to explain. The fear in her eyes. So she was helping with a case? More than that. She stumbled onto something big. Your neighbor Jeff Lindsay isn't just dealing drugs. He's running a distribution network through your complex. Using the building as a front, recruiting tenants, moving product through what looks like normal traffic. Frank felt sick. And Kara found out. She noticed patterns. Cars at odd hours. People who claimed to live there, but didn't. She started documenting everything, brought it to us 2 weeks ago. Bowers pulled out another photo. "Last night, we got a tip that Lindsay was planning to move a major shipment. We needed someone inside apartment 12C. It has a direct sight line to the loading area. Officer Hodges had just moved in as part of our operation. Your wife volunteered to help with surveillance. Why not just tell me?" "Because Lindsay's smart. He watches people. If you'd known, you might have acted differently around him. Tipped him off." Bowers' expression softened. "Your wife was trying to protect you. But Lindsay got suspicious anyway. That's why he came to your door this morning. To make me think she was cheating." Frank's hands clenched. "To destroy her credibility." "Exactly. If you divorced her, publicly accused her, it would discredit anything she said about him. Make it look like a scorned wife making things up." Bowers stood. "But we've got enough evidence now. We're moving in today. I wanted you to know what was really happening before it goes down." Frank drove back to the complex in a daze. He doubted Kara. Believed the worst based on appearances. The guilt sat heavy in his chest. Back at the apartment, he found Kara sitting in the hallway outside their door. She'd been crying. "Kara." She looked up, quickly wiping her eyes. "I'm sorry. I know you said to stay away, but I needed to grab some things. I talked to Detective Bowers." Frank sat down next to her on the floor. "He told me everything." Kara's shoulders sagged with relief. "I wanted to tell you. I hated lying. But they said it was safer if you didn't know. Jeff Lindsay came to my door specifically to make me think you were having an affair. I know. Manuel and I saw him in the parking lot last night. He was watching the building. I think he suspected something." She turned to Frank. "I'm so sorry. When you knocked this morning, I panicked. I couldn't tell you the truth with Manuel right there. His cover's not fully blown yet. But I couldn't let you think that you'd cheat on me." Frank took her hand. "I should have trusted you. Should have known you'd have a reason. You had every right to be angry. It looked terrible." They sat in silence for a moment. Then Frank asked, "What happens now?" "They raid his apartment at noon. They're bringing in teams from 3 precincts. It's going to be big." Kara checked her watch. "I'm supposed to stay here, out of sight, until it's over." Frank glanced down the hallway toward Jeff's apartment. "Does he know you're onto him?" "I don't think so. But he's paranoid. This morning was him testing me, I think. Seeing if I'd crack under pressure." At 11:45 a.m., the building started to fill with people in regular clothes. Joggers, delivery people, someone walking a dog. All undercover officers, Frank realized. Kara watched from their apartment window, her phone in hand. "They're in position," she murmured. At noon exactly, everything happened at once. Officers in tactical gear flooded the building. Shouts of police. "Search warrant," echoed through the hallways. Frank heard Jeff's door crash open, followed by more shouting. 15 minutes later, Detective Bowers knocked on their door. "It's done. Lindsay's in custody, along with 4 others. We found enough fentanyl to supply half the city, cash, weapons. Your wife's testimony is going to be crucial in putting them away." Kara nodded, her face pale but determined. Over the next few days, the full scope of the operation became clear. Jeff Lindsay had been running drugs through the complex for 2 years, using his import-export business as a cover. He'd recruited several tenants as distributors, threatened others into silence. The operation had been sophisticated, careful, nearly invisible. Until Kara noticed. She'd seen a woman in apartment 8B, a single mother named Sherry Carson, looking terrified every time Jeff walked by. Had watched as delivery trucks came at 2 a.m., always to the same loading bay. Had recognized the signs from her years at the DA's office. The trial was set for 3 months later. In the meantime, Frank and Kara had to navigate the aftermath. The other tenants learned the truth, that Kara had been instrumental in taking down the drug ring. Some thanked her. Others, friends of those arrested, glared at her in the parking lot. They hired security, changed their routines. Frank accompanied Kara everywhere for the first month, until the police assured them the immediate threat had passed. One evening, 2 months after the arrest, they sat on their balcony watching the sunset. The complex felt different now. Quieter. Safer. "Do you regret it?" Frank asked. "Getting involved?" Kara considered the question. "I regret that I had to lie to you. That Jeff almost destroyed us with his stunt. But catching him? No. I'd do it again. Even knowing it put you in danger? Someone had to stop him. Sherry Carson told me later that Jeff had been threatening her, forcing her to let dealers use her apartment because she was behind on rent. She has a 6-year-old daughter, Frank, living in that environment." Kara's voice hardened. "Yeah, I'd do it again." Frank pulled her close. "You're braver than I am. You doubted me for about 20 minutes before you started looking for answers. That's pretty trusting, all things considered. I should have trusted you from the start. You're human." Jeff played it perfectly, catching you off guard, showing you exactly what would hurt most. She leaned her head on his shoulder. "But you came back. You listened. That's what matters." The trial was swift and brutal. Kara testified for 6 hours, laying out everything she'd observed, every photo she'd taken, every pattern she'd noticed. Jeff's lawyer tried to attack her credibility, brought up Frank finding her at Manuel's apartment, suggested she'd fabricated evidence out of spite. But the prosecution was ready. They had Manuel's testimony as an officer. They had the physical evidence. They had other witnesses who came forward once they knew it was safe. Jeff Lindsay was convicted on 14 counts, including drug trafficking, weapons charges, and witness intimidation. He was sentenced to 25 years. As he was led from the courtroom, he looked at Kara one last time. No remorse, just cold hatred. Kara stared back, unflinching. Outside the courthouse, Frank put his arm around her. "It's over. It's over," she agreed. But it wasn't, not quite. A week later, Sherry Carson knocked on their door. She held her daughter's hand and carried a homemade pie. "I wanted to thank you," she said to Kara, "for being brave enough to speak up. He was destroying my life, making me help him, threatening to report me to child services if I refused. I was terrified every day." Tears welled in her eyes. "You saved us." After Sherry left, Kara broke down crying for the first time since the whole ordeal began. Frank held her, letting her release the fear and stress she'd been holding in for months. "I was so scared," she whispered. "That morning when you came to Manuel's apartment, I thought Jeff had done something to you. That's why I was there so early. We'd been watching his apartment all night, waiting for the shipment. When you knocked, I thought the worst. We're okay. We're safe. You made sure of that. I almost lost you over this. When you looked at me in that hallway, and you thought." She couldn't finish. "Hey." Frank lifted her chin. "You didn't lose me. I'm right here. And I'm never going to doubt you again. You're the strongest person I know, Kara. You saw evil and you fought it, even when it would have been easier to look away. I just did what was right. That's what makes you extraordinary. Most people wouldn't have." 6 months later, the complex had new management. Several of the apartments had turned over, filled with new families who didn't know the building's dark history. Kara received a commendation from the police department for her assistance. The DA's office even offered her a job, which she declined. She liked private practice, but she'd stay in touch, help when they needed her expertise. Frank and Kara were stronger than before. The crisis had tested them and proved that their trust in each other ran deeper than appearances, deeper than misunderstandings. On their 4th anniversary, Frank woke to find Kara already up, making breakfast. He came up behind her, wrapping his arms around her waist. "Remember this day 4 years ago? I married the best man I've ever known," Kara said. "I married a woman who takes down drug dealers in her spare time." She laughed. "It was a one-time thing. I promise. I don't know. You're pretty good at it. Maybe you missed your calling." Kara turned in his arms, her expression serious. "My calling is being your wife. The rest is just doing what needs to be done." Frank kissed her. "I love you, Kara Duffy Scott. I love you too." Outside their window, the world continued on. But inside their home, they built something that couldn't be shaken by lies or appearances or threats. They built something real, and that was worth everything.